Hi, I'm Adam Simmons from Project Geospatial. We're here at the GEOINT 2024 Symposium here in Orlando, Florida. And once again, we have the pleasure of talking with Scott Kaplan. Scott, you're here to talk to us about one of your, one of your favorite jobs,
Sure.
Civil Air Patrol.
Yes, one of my volunteer job.
Okay.
So
But
at
that
night.
doesn't mean it's less significant.
No, like it's actually extremely significant because of what we're doing. Literally today, we're helping the community. So there were the tornadoes last night in Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
And we're doing real world damage assessments right now using the National Geospatial team.
Well, it proves this stuff is nonstop. The activities that keep the Civil Air Patrol constantly busy, right? So,
Right.
how many events have you already had this year?
So this year, let's see, we had the tornadoes in January, we had the fires in Texas in February. That was a running. We joked like we were thinking we were going to finally make it through a month without having to work a disaster. God has a sense of humor. On February 29th is when we started doing assessments.
So you got the sign with the numbers, like 29 days since last
Yeah,
incident?
right. But this one was literally on February 29th is when we started doing the assessments for the wildfire that went across Texas, northern Texas. And then after that, just last week we were doing the tornadoes that went through Oklahoma. Last month it was Ohio, and some of the other parts of the Midwest. The worst one was up in Ohio. This one last week, we were doing Minder, Oklahoma, Iowa, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and then another F4 went last night through another town in Oklahoma, and FEMA and Kaplan working together as I speak, doing the assessments for it.
Well, can you talk to us and remind us the role of the Civil Air Patrol's geospatial mission as it applies to working with all these natural disasters?
Yeah, sure. So we had a conversation a couple years ago at the GEOINT out in St. Louis, talking about what was Civil Air Patrol. One, what was Civil Air Patrol? Two, how we're talking the damage assessment. What were we doing? And we've done a lot of different things in the past few years that have massively expanded on the program. So first of all, Civil Air Patrol is a 65,000 member nonprofit organization that falls as also the auxiliary of the Air Force. We have three major missions. One's cadet programs, which is focusing on kids 12 to 18, potentially to 21. Thinking in the venue of teaching them leadership, character development, physical fitness, but aerospace education. The second one is aerospace education. It is one of the large aerospace education organizations in the world, and working with schools and communities, everything on those. But under the aerospace education umbrella is general STEM, and we'll get into it, but geospatial STEM falls under that as well, which is actually a huge piece of what St. Louis is hopefully going to help with. The third major piece is emergency services. CAP, when it does real-world operations, falls under Title 10 authorities as the auxiliary of the Air Force. So it gives us a lot more capability than any other nonprofit that's out there. And because of that, when we're doing real-world missions, whether it's search and rescue, damage assessments for FEMA, looking for downed aircraft, even helping on the ground with search and rescue teams, with running pods for FEMA, things like that, we have the protection of the Air Force authorities.
Right.
I don't know of any other nonprofit that wears both the Title 36 nonprofit hat and a Title 10 hat under the Air Force.
All right. Well, no, I appreciate the overview. As far as a specific disaster, when that happens, can you talk to us in the day of the life of perhaps an individual who can support one of those efforts?
Sure. So the program that I lead that we're talking about is the National Geospatial Program for Civil Air Patrol.
Right.
We've been in existence for about 5 years now total, and really since Hurricane Ida is when the real big disaster response component happened. We do have other geospatial teams within CAP, so like our cell phone forensics team, our national radar team, they're helping with searching for missing aircraft extremely quickly, using some of the tools and capabilities that are actually out here on the floor.
Right.
But the other major piece that has come out over the past few years is doing damage assessments for FEMA. And when I say that is when we look at imagery of a structure, FEMA classifies it in a very certain path. So it's no visible damage, is it affected, minor, major, or a destroyed structure. And that's really important because once you make that assessment, and they can connect it to an address for that home, when a victim comes to ask for support, they go, "Yep, we've done an assessment. We can see that your house was destroyed. Here's a check to get you back up on your feet and getting started." During Hurricane Ida and then today, because I think we talked about Hurricane Ida like a couple years ago, we had just started it. At that point, it was the first major disaster that we'd worked. We had for that one 327 different volunteers help. Since that time, FEMA came up with better training with Esri and others to actually have an official training program for teaching our members how to do geospatial damage assessment.
Right.
And so we've built the world's largest volunteer imagery analyst corps for disaster response. It was an old NGA mission that NGA gave to FEMA. FEMA didn't have the manpower. We're now doing it with volunteers. But the fun part is I've made it the most inclusive capability disaster response for all of Civil Control. Because I don't care how old you are. I actually have cadets that are doing real world damage assessments. I have people in their 60s and 70s. I don't care where you live. During Hurricane Ian, we had a guy that was in Japan doing assessments, plus out of 37 other states. And I don't care what you look like. I don't care what gender you are. I don't care what disability you have, unless you're blind, in which case I need to use you in a different way because it is a visual assessment. But we will find a way to use every CAP member if they want to do real-world damage assessment supporting FEMA post-disaster. But where have we come since then? Since the start of Hurricane Ida, we've done over 30 different major disasters. Every major hurricane you've heard of, every major fire you've heard of. It's not California, so we'll talk about the Lahaina fire. Every major tornado flooding events, like up in Vermont and Kentucky and Montana. We did all the assessments for those for FEMA.
Awesome. Well, how about what do you hope to grow the CAP into from here on out?
Sure. So the NASA Geospatial Program, it was 3 weeks ago, I briefed the national leadership for all of Civil Air Patrol. What they've realized over the past 5 years is needs to be a fully integrated program across CAP. And what does that mean? The goals of the program haven't changed since the beginning. One was to help augment FEMA and other states and organizations in times of natural disasters with train people with GIS skills, specifically CAP members. We've proven we're doing that. The second was to help CAP internally, visualize our own capabilities using geospatial information and GIS tools to help CAP internally, corporately. Third is to provide a whole nother career path into the geospatial STEM field for the cadets. There's 30,000 kids. And not everybody wants to be a pilot. I know that's blasphemy within CAP. But I keep telling CAP, we're an aerospace organization at heart with an entire geospatial mission. A lot of the things that CAP already does, even for the cadets. So the Stellar Explorers program is a program that was started by AGI. They're figuring out how to launch rockets into space. The Cyber Patriot program, that is also has a geospatial component to it. But let's have a solid geospatial program. And that's honestly where St. Louis comes into play, is we're having a lot of conversations because of the hub of it trying to become with how do we partner with organizations like Gateway Global, or how do we partner with Esri, how do we partner with USGIF, how do we partner with, who else am I thinking of, USGIF, with organizations and others, to, instead of recreating a wheel for CAP, America View is the other one I was thinking, which is run out of USGS. How do we partner with all those different organizations? We then provide an entire geospatial STEM program that's already ready-made for all the CAP cadets that are interested.
Got it. Awesome. Okay, so in terms of circling back to the GEOINT Symposium here, what unique technologies have you seen on the floor so far that you believe can enable and grow what you're doing at the CAP?
Actually, it's kind of interesting. We've been having a lot of different discussions with that. So there's a lot of different companies here that are working in that sphere. Just today, Descartes Labs. Geosci was just bought out by Descartes Labs. They're doing a search and rescue
Daniela Moody
tool, right? So you were talking with her earlier. They're designing their rescue tool for their situational awareness picture for AFRCC, for ACAR. I'm like, do you know how it works on the back end? Here, let me show you the Slack channel that the search and rescue teams are talking to CAP with the cell phones and the NRAD team to do that. They didn't know that piece. CAP's involved in that. talking with eyesight. Eyesight's coming out with their whole capability to try and look at, automated fire assessments, automated damage assessments for that. That's great. We've been looking into that on the FEMA side, and then on the CAP side to help them, saying, hey, look, here's how your points are doing. I'm talking with FireSat from Muon Space. Fires, that's going to be the entry way with how we can track fires. We're helping support fires. Obviously, USGS, we're talking with them on their fires. So there's lots of people on this floor that are already involved.
Anything unique that has surprised you that's still making you go, how can we use this?
It's an interesting one. I've found a lot of neat technologies. Problem is now is I've talked to so many of them over the times. Now I'm like, what's kind of new? I like to poke the chest of going, why are you different? The one I learned about, I think, a little more that I didn't understand what their role was Sky-Fi. I like them because just from being on the IC-USGS side of the fence, is Sky-Fi sees GEGD for the whole rest of the commercial world. Well, that's a really cool capability. How are they working in with Impact Observatory? How are they working with Dante AI? Is another really good one that I like. How are they using it potentially? So I see a lot of intersections between, I like looking big picture of how does it integrate across all the different companies, not actual software, but what's each one's niche and how can they work together?
Awesome. Well, Scott, any last minute updates you can provide us on what the CAP is up to that perhaps you'd like our audience to learn more about, or maybe something to look forward to in the near future?
Yeah, so I'd say the one thing that we didn't really get to hit on a whole lot is what we did last year. This is what shows the power of volunteers. During the Lahaina fire, which was in Hawaii, that entire event damage assessment was done by 3 Civil Air Patrol members, 3 FEMA folks. That map was shown in a tweet with President Biden holding that map in his hand on Air Force One while talking to the governor of Hawaii. That map was made by volunteers. That's the power of CAP going all the way to the top and helping support policymakers. And then into the future, now as we partner with the other organizations here for the STEM education side, we'll build the future leaders into the geospatial industry. We're expanding on how we're doing it, because we're using all imagery sources now, not just satellite, open source, AI. That's a big piece, obviously. We didn't get to talk about AI, but AI and everything else, those are all big ones that are coming down the pike that we're getting involved with. We worked with MIT Lincoln Labs and others on training AI models. How do we help not be made non-relevant by AI, but how can we actually help it, incorporate it, trust but verify? That's a lot of what I see in the future.
Excellent. All right, Scott. Well, thank you very much. For those interested in somehow wanting to either join CAP or participate or even contribute in some way, what's the best way they can reach out?
There's 2 easy ways. One, go civilairpatrol.com. That's the main website. We actually have a link off of that, but we also have a geospatial hub, gis.cap.gov. And you can go there and look at some of the emergency management side of the house. You can find a squadron. Remember, we're in all 50 states. We're actually in the DC. We're in Puerto Rico. We have places overseas. And again, it's for everybody. It's a volunteer organization.
Excellent.
It's a great organization.
Well, thank you very much for the discussion. And I enjoy learning about your updates. And I'm excited to see what's ahead, as you're right. The evolution of what you've been doing has been incredible. And be really incredible to see what you do this next year.
All right. No, I'm excited about it, and I appreciate the time to continue to tell our story.
Awesome. Well, I'm Adam Simmons of Project Geospatial. We will talk to everybody next time.